Hey there neighbors, Ken here with etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Curt custom fit base rail kit and brackets for your Ram truck here on our 2015 Ram 1500. So our neighbor today has a Ram 1500 and he's wanting to be able to tow his fifth wheel camper so he can take his family out on a fun adventure. Now, because his Ram has a short bed, that severely limits the options that he has for towing a fifth wheel. As you can see, our hitch and our base rails are dangerously close to the cab side of our bed. So there's a very good chance that when he goes to make a turn, the nose of his fifth wheel is going to come into contact with the cab of his truck and end up damaging both. Because of that, he's going to be limited to only using a rotating pin box so he can push that pivot point back to the connection point at the trailer, and then he doesn't have to worry about the nose of the trailer coming in contact with the cab of the truck. So that's why he went with our base rail kit today, because with any kind of rotating pin box, you're going to need 4 points of contact, which base rails will give you because you can put the legs into the base rails here and get that 4 points of contact, have that locked in with your pin and clip, and then be able to hook up to your rotating pin box and add in that custom fit wedge kit so that way you can lock it into the fifth wheel hitch and prevent it from pivoting inside the jaws. This base rail kit is not going to come with the Curt E16. You can purchase that as a different kit. It's going to be a different SKU number for that kit, but as just the base rail kit, it's going to be the base rails that you see, the hardware that we're going to be using to bolt it all up. It's going to come with the bracketry that's going to be down below, as well as that cross member that's going to go in so that you can get all of this bolted down and torqued. From there, it's going to be just figuring out what trailer hitch you want to put in there. Anyone that's ISR, which is industry standard rating. So you'll be able to drop one of those in and be able to tow your fifth wheel. Now, as far as tools go, nothing like too crazy specialty-wise, but you will need to have probably a 3/8 drive torque wrench, a 1/2-inch drive torque wrench, just because there are some pretty high torque ratings you're going to have to get to with those 5/8 bolts that are down below. Other than that, with how this popped out here on our cab side rail, it comes down right up against our hat channel. Now, this might be just an issue that I ran into. There was a certain trim package deal, or maybe just because of the bed length. You might not have to deal with this, but if you do, I did end up using a burr bit and kind of grinding out a hole into the hat channel so I had a little bit more space so I could get the nut handle into there with all the spacer blocks that we're going to be putting on it, and then get that actually onto the bolt itself, just because it is extremely tight space there. So that was honestly the hardest part of this. It took up a good majority of our install time. So this might be something where you just don't want to deal with the hassle and you'd much rather hand it off. So if that is the case for you, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you want to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll help walk you through the process. Starting off our install, we're going to have to measure from the end of our bed in towards our cab to figure out where we need to place our rail. So with us having a short bed, it's going to be 29 inches from the end of our bed to the edge of our railing here. So what we'll do is we'll take our tape measure, and now if you have a plastic liner, that's going to end up throwing off the thickness here, so it's going to come out just a little bit further. Same thing with our spray-in liner. Now they do mention in the instructions that if you have a spray-in liner, you can just kind of ignore that, but that does add about a 1/16 of an inch to your measurement here, so I like to keep that in mind when I'm doing it. Now I'm going to bring my rail till I'm right at 29, and I'm just kind of guessing right here in the middle. I am going to do it from both ends so that way I can make sure I have this square, and then we're also going to measure side to side, so just going from the edge of our rail to our wheel well on both sides, so that way we can make sure we have this perfectly centered before we start marking out any of our holes. So this process can take just a little bit of time to kind of get totally perfect, but this is going to make it a whole lot easier when you go to actually start putting in the lower brackets if you have everything perfectly centered. Side to side, and one more time we'll check front to back. 29 and 29. All right, now I'm going to grab my paint marker. We can start marking out our hole locations. So you'll see there's 4 holes on the front and back on either side, and we're going to be going, if we number this from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to be going into number 3 on both the front side and the back side. So we'll mark that with our paint marker right in the center. Then from there, we're going to come over to our center one, and we're going to be doing the cab side of this. So we'll place that there, and then same thing over here. And now that we have that marked, we can slide our rail out of the way. We'll come back with our center punch, and we will make a little indentation because we're going to start drilling these out. Now we're going to be taking our 3/16 drill bit and drilling through, creating our pilot holes, but you do want to be careful. On the driver's side, we have our fuel tank right below our bed here, so we want to make sure that we're not drilling too deep and potentially drilling right into our fuel tank. So make sure that you are taking it nice and slow on these two holes over here, and just as soon as you get through that, kind of pull back, and then we can kind of clean that up with some files instead, so that way we just minimize that risk of drilling into the fuel tank. We're going to get down into our wheel wells. Ours has a plastic liner, so we're going to be removing that from both the passenger and the driver's side, so that way we have more access into our frame rails so that we can get our bracketry in place. Now, ours also has an optional mud flap, so that's something else we're going to have to pop off so that we can get this out. So yours obviously is going to be a little bit different depending on your trim level and if you have that mud flap or not. So just go ahead, take out both of the plastic wheel well liners, and we can move on to our next step. There we go. Since we have a dual exhaust, is to remove the hanger right here. Now, our exhaust is still being supported by this hanger up front here, or towards the rear of the vehicle. But this cross member, we're going to need to get everything off the top of it, including the wiring harnesses, so that we can run our cross member through. Now, I've got a 13mm socket on my wrench, and you can see I'm already on the nut or bolt for our hanger. We can start loosening that up. All right, we got the exhaust hanger removed. I don't remember if I said, but I was using a 13mm socket to get that off, and then I switched over to a wrench. It was fighting me quite a bit just because of the built-up corrosion here. So now that we have that out, we'll set that aside. We're going to be disconnecting any of our harnesses that are sitting on top of our cross member here. So there's a push pin, a little Christmas tree style one right here. We have one right in line with this center beam that's running back here. I haven't popped that one out yet. There's another one right here, and then there's a fourth one that's hidden up in this corner here. Now there's also the breather valve here, or hose for our rear differential. There's a spot that's right in line with this slotted hole here on the back that we're gonna have to pop off as well. So we get each one of these out, and then we can start slipping in our little cross beam that we have from our kit. And those will just push right off. We're also going to disconnect them. So I've already popped the tab loose, and I did have to actually pop this out just because taking these tabs loose, I'm so kind of crusted up that it did not want to come out for me. So once we get the red tab pushed out, we can then press in on the black piece here, disconnect our harness, because we're going to need to drop the harness out of the way because our bracket's going to be sitting right above our cross member here. So it'll be the same on the passenger and driver's side. Those disconnected, and then we can push the wiring up out of the way. Although it doesn't look like we got enough room for our connector to push through. So I'm going to figure that out and we can go from there. But big thing here is just getting everything out from the cross member. I have already wiggled this up into place almost. Definitely a fight, especially if you have a dual exhaust. So what I ended up doing was slotting in the passenger side up over the rear differential, getting it as far forward as I could on the frame rail, And then I was able to get the driver's side to pop up right over the gas tank. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of kind of twisting it. So like you can see, there's some cutouts on the ends. And I kind of use that by turning and giving myself a little bit more room. I was able to slide it over a little bit more and kind of get that wiggle room I needed to get the driver's side up in place too. So once we have it up there, we get all of our harnesses out of the way. We're going to flip it so that the open end is facing towards the front of the vehicle and the closed end is facing towards our hat channel here. And we're going to want to line that up with the holes that we drilled. So this is the side closest to the tailgate. On the other side of our hat channel is the other side of our rails. So the holes that are in our new cross member are going to match up with that. Now that we have our cross rail in place, we're going to go back up to our bed and we're going to try to get it so that we have our holes enlarged up to 17/32. Now I don't have a 17/32 bit, so we're going to be using our step bit, and I'm just going to keep checking it as we go, making sure that my bolt is able to slip through and has like a little bit of wiggle room, but we don't want to have too much to where it's going to be kind of popping all the way through. All right, now that I got my holes drilled out, I've also come back with a file, clean those up, make sure there's no little burrs sticking out that could potentially cut us or prevent the bolts from passing through. Now we can vacuum, and then I'm going to take a paint marker. I'm going to go with black in our case and just kind of paint up all of the bare metal that's showing so that way it doesn't corrode. We're going to take our 5/8 hardware, we got a flat washer we're going to throw on there, and then when we slip this up through our cross member, we'll find the hole for our C channel, and on the other side of that we're going to have a nice flange nut to put on up in the C channel, and then we can tighten those down. Same thing over here, I've already got this one in place. It's going to be right on the end of this slotted hole here. Now obviously, once we start drawing this up, it is going to kind of want to bend it, or it might just kind of stop on you just because we are going in at an angle here. But you should have it to where that hole lines up with the outer edge of that slot on both sides. Now when you're snugging these down, you can use either a 15/16 socket and wrench or a 24mm socket and wrench if you don't have standard. Actually just use my impact. It's a little goofy just because there's a lot of wiggle room here with the slot, so the bolt just wants to keep sliding on me. So I'm going to hold that with my wrench and just snug it up just a bit with the impact. Now our next part's going to be dropping in our hardware, the 1/2-inch bolts that we have, but before we do that, I wanted to talk about the U-shaped spacers. So because there's a gap between our railing and then the bed itself with each one of these ribs, on the rib side wherever our hole is, so in this case this hole over here, I had to put the little spacer on the bottom of our bed between the cross rail that we installed and then the bed itself. You can kind of see it, it's way down in there, it's that silver kind of poking out that you see. So that is that U-shaped spacer down below. Now that's going to be the case for both of these. We're sitting on top of the rib, so we're good up top here, but down in the center we do have that big gap. So that's where we're going to be putting in another one of these spacers, right, for our center hole. And that's going to help prevent the gap from crushing the bed when we start to tighten up our hardware. So with that in place, I'm going to start dropping in our 5 1/2-inch bolts. So for this next part, you're going to need a second set of hands. I'm going to show you essentially what our plan here is. But you're going to take one of the nut handles. That's this guy. It's a little welded on nut with a handle so that you can hold it and get it in place. We're also going to be taking a square hole spacer. Now they list all of them as square hole spacers. This one is the rectangle with a hole right in the center. We're going to be using these. And I've already got them just kind of started just to show you. But on each one of our bolts, we're going to have that square hole spacer. It's going to go and butt up against the bed, and then we'll have that weld nut handle, and we'll Obviously you need a second set of hands so that we can have that stick. Now, if you don't have that second set of hands, when you get up there, eventually you'll get it snug down enough to where it should hit the hat channel and stop it from moving, but you might have a little bit of a struggle. Just to get it started, just kind of grabbed the bolt and twisted it so it would thread in just a little bit to get it going. So that way I don't have to sit here and hold it and then try and get up top again at the same time. So I'm gonna get the other side in because we do have 3 of them going towards the front of the vehicle. We've got that center one and we've got one on both sides. So I'm gonna get these started. I'm gonna grab a second set of hands, have them come and hold down on the inside while I go up top and start snugging each one of these bolts down. So for our next spot, we're gonna be putting in our rail closest to our cab, and for that what we want to do is grab our trailer hitch base. So I've got the legs already put together. We're going to slot that into our first base rail and then slot it into our rear one, or forward one I guess in this case. I've also gone ahead and just double checked measurement wise. So what you're looking for, even if you didn't have the base of your hitch, what you want to do is go from center to center of the rails. You should get 22 inches, which I'm getting right now. And then the next thing is just to make sure that you have it spaced correctly side to side. So measuring from the wheel well over to the bracket, I'm getting like a hair over 4 1/16 on this side. And I'm like a 1/16 off over here. I'm right at like 4, so I could slightly tap it over. There we go. All right, now that we have that where we want it, we're going to mark out the hole locations again. Once you have it all marked out, you can go ahead and drill it out just like you did with the first rail. Now, once again, keep in mind, your gas tank is right below on the driver's side. So, not as close, at least with that first rail that we put in, definitely going to be under the cab side rail here. So, make sure that you are taking your time. You don't go too far and accidentally drill into your gas tank. Now, here's our setup because we have one bolt that's going to be dropping through into our custom fit bracket. That one's totally fine, no problems there. Now the other one comes out inside of our hat channel, and that's where we have this at. So we've got a handle nut, which has that nut welded onto it. We've got our square spacer that we've been putting on the bottom of all of our vertical bolts. And then we also have our U-shaped spacer, which is gonna go onto the bottom because we are sitting inside a rib here. So this needs to be between, or the first thing that's gonna go on there to take up the space for the rib. Then our square spacers are going to be getting the entire bottom of that rib, and then the handle nut here. Now the problem we're running into here is that we're so close to the edge of the hat channel, this doesn't fit. There's not enough room to make up that gap that we have from the edge of it to where the nut is because the bolt is rubbing the hat channel all the way down. So I looked back at some other videos we've had in the past with some other kits, and this seems to just be a common problem on Rams, no matter which one you're doing. So what I'm doing right now is taking my grinding bit, and I'm just kind of grinding out the hat channel right where my bolt's going to sit. So that way when I go to put in the handle nut and our spacers, I can easily get that and slot it in, have enough room for it to go in, have the bolt drop through along with our railing here, and have it come straight down instead of being crooked, because originally when we were putting that in, it was going to go in at a pretty severe angle, and it wasn't really going to want to tighten down right because it was kind of sitting at an angle like that. So that's just not how we want to do it. So it's definitely important to kind of sit here and figure out exactly what's the right way to get this properly tightened down, and that's going to be trimming our hat channel, unfortunately. So you might run into this as well. It may just be trim package issue or the bed length issue, something like that. Maybe if it was a longer bed, that hat channel would have came out just slightly at a different spot and we wouldn't have the same issue. So with all that being said, I'm going to keep drilling this out and then we can show you what it looks like once we're all done. right, so we got our driver's side in. Now we're gonna work on our passenger side. So like I was talking about, we have our handle nut. We're gonna have our square spacer. So that'll be touching our handle nut. And then on top of all that, we're gonna have a U-shaped spacer because that's gonna sit inside of that rib. So I'm gonna have Jesse hold this in. We've got a long pair of needle nose pliers as well, because we're gonna have to get all the way inside this hat channel, get all the way back to where that bolt is gonna drop through, which definitely is not easy. Once we get in there, I'm gonna be up top and I can drop the bolt through and we'll get it through our base rail. Now that we got the hat channel one in, we're gonna wanna get the other one in as well that's gonna be closer to the cab. Now for that, we have a special bracket that's gonna match up with the holes in our frame, but we're gonna have to fish wire in some hardware first. Now the brackets, they're gonna look just like this. The driver's side is gonna be slightly different. It's gonna have more of a curve to it because it has to get around the fuel line that runs from your port all the way down to the gas tank. There's also gonna be a little cover that we're gonna stick on here. I've already got it on the other side, and that is just a little kind of rubber coated protection piece, so that way, since it's going to be sitting against that line, we don't want it sitting there rubbing against metal and then eventually wear out just from the road vibration. So just to kind of show you how this is going to go in here, before I fish wire, we'll slip it up over the shock, and it's going to match up with the holes in our bed there, and then with the hole we have up into our base rail. So now I'm going to get my hardware ready. We can fish wire it in. For our first hole, that's going to be this guy right here. I'm going to put the hardware end of our fish wire in, go over to this larger slotted hole. Once I pop that through, I can then thread on my square hole spacer and a carriage bolt. Now I like to leave like the last thread or two off just to make it a little bit easier to get off. Sometimes the fish wire wants to stick. We're going to slot that in, and then this is going to pull right up in place once we need it. But for right now, we're going to leave that off because we got to get our bracket in place, and we are also going to have another spacer. So behind our custom fit bracket, we're going to have a larger square hole spacer, and then we'll have a smaller circle hole spacer that's going to be at that back hole. So that'll go between the frame and our bracket. Now for the other one, we're going to reverse fish wire, so we'll want to take our square hole spacer and then our carriage bolt. We'll thread those in. Pop the head of the bolt in, then our spacer, and then once we go to get our bracket in place, we can easily just pull it right up and be good to go. So at this point, I'm gonna put the bracket in place, not all the way on, just so that we can get our spacers in. Pop our fish wire through our mounting holes. Now they only give you 2 of these fish wires, so make sure that you don't tear them up trying to get one side in, because you'll need them for the other. Get our circle hole spacer. And one other thing, I also took this support down. So this guy right here, that was just 2 bolts, one on the other end, and that was a 10mm socket. That gives you a little bit more working room here. There we go. Now before I let this go, I am going to throw the flange nut on just so that I don't have to worry about this popping back through. So I'm going to untwist my fish wire. We'll get that off. And I'm using my pointer finger here on the threads to help hold that bolt in place. There we go. We don't want to go too tight because we still need a little wiggle room over here. Go. I think for this one, I'm going to grab a screwdriver, help hold that in place so it doesn't slip back in. There we go. Now we can drop our bolt in from the top, and once again we're going to have a U-shaped spacer because we are inside of a rib, and then we're going to also have our square hole spacer and then our handle nut. Got our bracket in place. I've got my U-shaped spacer between the bed and our bracket, and then our square hole spacer and our handle nut here. Just trying to get this to all line up and start threading in. We need a third person. I need somebody up top to spin that while I hold it. All right, now that we have both ends done, it's time to come back to the center. Now this one is probably going to be the easiest one out of this whole rail here because we're wide open down below. We've got plenty of space. Now, little difference here, we're inside of the rib up top here, so our U-shaped spacer is going to go up top instead of down below like we have been with our previous ones. So I'm going to get that set, drop my bolt in, and then now I'm going to get down there and we're going to get that square hole spacer and then our handle nut. Once you have all your fasteners in place, we can now go ahead and torque down our vertical hardware. We'll then go down below. We'll hit those 5/8 bolts that are running into that C channel that we had going across. And then from there, we can tighten up our frame brackets that are on the outside of our frame rail. Make sure that you are paying attention to the torque settings listed in the instructions because it is going to be two different ones depending on that bolt size. So right now we're going to be torquing our 5/8 bolts running up into our cross rail here, and these are a pretty high torque. I've got a 15/16 socket on one side, the wrench on the other, and I've got Sam holding the wrench so that way we can torque down on the bolt. Once you get the 5/8 bolts torqued, now it's time to come over to your frame brackets, and it's going to be those two carriage bolts. We got the one right here and to the right of it. So that'll be for both the driver and passenger side. So we'll get in here. And with that on, that's going to do it for the install side of this. Now we have to get back down below here, and we're going to start reinstalling the wiring harnesses, the breather tube for the rear differential, and then also we have our wheel well liners to put back on and our spare tire to put back up. So I'm going to get down there, I'm going to route all that wiring, and then I'll show you how I did it. Starting out with our breather, I have that running up. I just kind of looped it right here with our cross member because we can't get too close to our exhaust here. So I looped it, I just zip tied it in a couple different spots to help hold it up. So one here, one up top with the valve up top hidden up over the cross member so that way it's not getting any water in it. As for the wiring, so it used to kind of pop, it was popped into the top of our cross member here, which is now being taken up by our cross rail from our kit. So instead I looped it down through the center here, came back over, made our connection here. Now I did zip tie it up, trying to keep it up out of the way. I didn't go with those same push pin holes that we used to have. Same thing over on the other side. I did zip tie that as well, but I did that lower. I went to this brake line here because, like I said, I'm trying to stay as far away as I can from the exhaust, but obviously we have limited space. One other thing I did was I put on the exhaust hanger bracket as well, so that will go right back into that same hole that it was in before. There's a slot in the, or a cutout in the cross rail that we got from the kit, and that's going to allow for that to go right back into where it was so that we can reattach it and have our bracket held, holding the exhaust up now. So at this point, we have all that taken care of. Now we need to hop over into the wheel well and get our liners put back in place as well as our mud flaps. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Curt base rail and bracket fifth wheel kit here on our 2015 Ram 1500. My name's Kevin, and if you're still looking for the right fifth wheel hitch setup for your Ram 1500, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.